Subject is on wellness in neurogaming, and my particular sort of neurons inside of my head are getting a little bit wilted and tired here after all day. So I'd love for you all, if you're game, since this is about wellness, let's just stand up for a second and stretch out a little bit. It's like a seventh inning stretch. Okay, I wish I was a wellness instructor, I could tell you more, but move your arms around, okay, get some blood flowing. And then your brain will be a little more activated for what I think will be a fascinating discussion. So you can take your seats, or you can stay up, whichever you like.
Standing's very healthy.
That's right, that's right. All right, so we're going to talk about neurogaming and wellness. And I, by the way, am David Ewing Duncan. I'm a journalist. I write about science, life science. I tend to write as much on the policy and where we're going with a lot of these technologies than the technologies themselves. And I have to admit that I know a little bit about gaming, like everybody else. I love to play games. I know a little bit about the neural side because I've done a lot of articles, worked with a lot of amazing people. Connecting all of this, though, is somewhat new to me, and I'm excited to hear from our panelists about how we connect up neurogaming with wellness. And all the topics we're talking about here at this meeting, all the rest, education, everything else are important. But obviously this is us and how we stay healthy. So what I'd like to start with is ask each of our panelists to take 2 or 3 minutes, tell us who they are, a little bit about themselves, and also frame it, if you will, in the description of this panel, talk about where we are right now with this neurogaming and wellness, and a little bit where we may go. We'll talk more about that, but maybe you could frame it within the context of what each of you is doing. So, Nicole?
All right, great. Well, thank you very much for the introduction here. I'm really thrilled to be sharing the stage with such very accomplished, co-voyagers on this adventure on what we call, neurogaming. I'm Nicole Lazzaro. I run, for the past 22 years, I have run Xeo Design, XEO Design. And what we do is we unlock human potential through play. We've worked with major publishers in the gaming space, EA, Ubisoft, the Diner Dash franchise from Play First, as well as we've worked outside of games, where we've worked with people like Kaiser and Cisco and Oracle. My background is I've got a degree from cognitive psychology, so I like to look at what, how people think, learn, and remember, and really apply those techniques to what makes things fun. I'm most known for is, and this is where we're going in neurogaming, I believe, is research that I did where 10 years ago I mapped the emotions on people's faces using Ekman's facial action coding to the moments that players most like about games. So what was the most engaging moments in games? Everything from playing Tetris to Halo, Call of Duty to Bejeweled. And then I took those moments and did a cluster analysis of what those emotions were, grouped them by emotion, and then looked at, so you had surprise, curiosity, you had frustration leading to fiero, that feeling of winning, to disgust, to curiosity. And then I looked at, well, in each of these emotion clusters, which we call for the 4 keys, what were the actions? What were players doing? What kind of choices were they making that associated with these types of emotion? And so by backing it out, sort of hacking the what's fun problem from the players' faces, we discovered the types of engagement, loops that are most responsible for the engagement in games. So now where we're going, of course, is then taking this, well, now that we know this about games and what makes them engaging, not just points and badges, but really, exploration and role play and challenge and stuff like that, how can we take those and put them into products that can help people, in a sense, not just, in a sense, win the game of life? What can we do to make people happier and indeed save the world? By giving them tools to hack their own brain. And I'll go into a little bit more about that. But really simply, my take on it is that we've got sort of two, the reason why we're talking about wellness and gaming is that we've evolved over the millennia this, the ability to create behavior, good and bad, through experience. And when we run into problems, it's because we're doing things that are bad for us that feel good, right? So it's bad for us in our head and feel good in the stomach, like chocolate cake when I break up with my boyfriend or whatever. And then we have things that are good for us that are actually, that we actually have negative emotions towards. So I might be afraid of, as I was mentioning before, writing a book, or I might be, afraid to, submit a proposal for funding or something. So fear prevents me from doing things that are good for us. Well, what if we could reach in and, adjust those neural circuits, rewire the brain so that we had the behaviors that we could, that we ourselves could control. And I think that's how you do what my company is all about. Zeo Design, we're about unlocking human potential through play.
I love that, and we want to keep in mind that there is a fun aspect to this. And I love that you win by having a great life, long life, staying healthy. That sounds like a good game.
Well, I mean, we always ask this question, WTF, where's the fun?
I was wondering where you're going with that. Okay. and by the way, we do have an amazing panel. Zach and Casey put together. We have a gaming expert here who's moved into the healthy space. We have an entrepreneur. We have a business guy down there at the end who's discovered NeuroGaming in a big way. And we also have an expert with Isabela, who is a neuropsychologist and also moving in the space. So it's a very nice combination here. Anyway, Ariel?
Hey, I'm Ariel Garten, CEO of InterAxon. For anybody who doesn't know, we create brain sensing technology. We made Muse, the brain sensing headband, 4-channel, oh, thank you, 4-channel clinical grade EEG that slips on just like a pair of glasses. It's simple, it's easy to wear, and the first application that we're building is Muse Calm, and it helps you learn to manage your own mind. My background comes from design, neuroscience, and I'm also a psychotherapist, so my personal mission is to teach people to manage their own mind, to be able to decrease the anxiety, the stress, the inner critic, the insecurities that plague our lives, so that as we push these things to the back, the true us, the us that is free, that is happy, that is healthy, can come to the fore. So we've built a platform that anyone can build on top of, and we're really into the idea that when people start to understand their mind, they can start to change their life. And so when I think about where the industry is going, I'm really excited about all of the tools that are beginning to become available for people to touch their own minds for the first time, and all the techniques and the applications and the games and the paradigms that people will be able to build to help people unlock and then make use of that potential.
And I tried to calm. It was calming. It was very nice. And I think I did well. I don't really know. I was mostly in the calm space. So I guess that was good.
You did well, and of course you did well just by doing it, because by doing well, we do well for ourselves.
Exactly. Okay, Isabel?
Hi, my name is Isabela Granic, and okay, I'm in a bit of a confused place. So on my day job, I'm a professor of developmental psychology at Radboud University in the Netherlands. And most of my work has been looking at children's emotional well-being, using emotional neuroscience and developmental neuroscience and other methods to try to get at how to promote children's emotional health and well-being. And I also try to develop programs to try to enhance children's emotional well-being through cognitive behavioral treatments and other evidence-based practices. And I have come to a place of being very frustrated and bored and wanting to have better effects with our kids, and to try something really different. So this is where I came into the gaming space. And in the last year or so, I'm also co-founder with Rutger Engels of the PlayNice Institute. And our mission there is to try to develop games at the commercial grade level for children and adolescents that tap into the scientific techniques that we know are going to be able to change children's way of interacting socially with one another, and making them less anxious, less frustrated, less angry, teaching them how to manage those emotions through games, and through the games that are just as engaging as any kind of Portal, Call of Duty, any of those kinds of games. So that's sort of what we want to try to do with the PlayNice Institute.
Great, thank you. And Tommy?
Hi, everybody. I'm Tommy Sagroun. I am the CEO of Cognifit. Cognifit has been around for almost 15 years now. We are a scientific company that develop personalized brain fitness programs, which means that our programs are scientifically validated, and they're personalized because when you first start with our platform, you start by taking a baseline assessment. So because of that, we're going to know your cognitive strengths and weaknesses, and we can adapt the program for yourself. The program is for healthy population across all aging segments, but also for people with brain-related conditions. I'm going to give you an example. We had a partnership with one of the world's largest pharmaceutical company, Bayer, healthcare pharmaceutical. Bayer, they provide their patients with MS, with drug, and also with one of our specific brain training program that we designed for them. But also we work with professionals from the healthcare industry, such as doctors, physicians, neuropsychologists, but also with professionals from the education industry. We started working with some schools too, by providing them with a dedicated platform to assess, train, and track the cognition of their patients, clients, students. And this is what we do.
Okay, great. Well, let me, because I'm a journalist and we always like to be skeptical, that's just what we do. And living in this part of the world, I'm always hearing about amazing new technologies, amazing. And I know that there is some...
A maze, that sounds like a game, maze.
Yeah.
Maze, somehow.
A maze?
Yeah, that
Yes,
just somehow
exactly.
sounds like a game.
Uh-oh, I can already tell I have a feisty panel, at least on this end.
Amazing grace.
How
Ooh,
sweet the sound.
That's what you get for waiting to the end of the day, right? So let me ask, how real is this right now? I mean, we all know the potential. We're all here because of that. You come from different perspectives. I'd love to hear, we can talk about, Isabel, I know you've done studies, you've published studies on how effective games are, especially for, children who have disorders, but a lot of us are also thinking about healthy people. So, how real is this from that standpoint? I'd love to hear from the panel on a business standpoint, but maybe we could start with the actual science behind this.
Well, yeah, it's interesting because we just got a review paper published in American Psychologist on the benefits of playing video games. And this may not seem like a big deal to this group, but the APA, the American Psychological Association, so this is the flagship journal for that organization, has been so anti-gaming, and almost everything they've ever published scientifically has been on the violence and aggression related to kids who play video games, which is not good data, but never mind. And so the fact that they actually published this review that went through all of the cognitive benefits, which we've known about for a while, but also what we tried to do in this article was show the emotional benefits, the motivational benefits, and the social benefits, especially for kids, shows me that there's actually some real promise. And that was data that we actually reviewed really meticulously. There are randomized controlled trials, really good controlled experimental studies. So I think actually people are opening up to the idea that games themselves, now the neuro part is a different issue, but the games themselves can have an immense potential for children and adolescents and adults, of course, as well. And I think the neuro part of it is the exciting part, because finally the technology is getting accessible enough to put these things together in this kind of feedback loop. And we've had neurofeedback in our context and in our labs for a long time. It's just that we haven't been able to get it to the consumers. We knew it worked for children and anxiety for a long time. We just haven't been able to get it out to the consumers. Now, with things like Muse and NeuroSky and all these other headsets, we're really excited about the potential to bring it out to everyone, basically.
Is it still potential, though, or is it really beginning to happen?
I can tell you we have a pilot study that says that it's really starting to happen, and in July we have very large scale, hundreds of kids who are participating in these trials that are going to tell us if we can actually reduce anxiety, for example, in children by using these, by merging games and the neurofeedback headset.
I do advise people to look at this article, at least the one I read. I don't know if you published others. It's quite fascinating. It's even about violent games have some advantage, I guess, in kids, positives, which does go against at least some of the common wisdom that's been out there. So, other panelists, is this real yet?
So from a scientific perspective, we've had papers probably for the last 20 years on the benefits of ADD neurofeedback training. There's review papers like Arns demonstrating that, yes, even after you look through all these, some of them are kind of dodgy. So part of the problem that we've had is the science has been done poorly, so the validation isn't really accepted for good reason because it's not great science. But that doesn't mean that the background or the idea or the technology behind it isn't itself effective. Just the science hasn't been able to effectively prove it. When we look at the validation studies that are starting now, I know we have probably 20 or 30 different labs that have muses. We have our own studies starting, our own in-house studies that we've done that have demonstrated benefits in attention, decrease in stress, improvement in mood. We're now moving into third-party research demonstrating the same thing. So I would still say that is this happening? I think we're on the threshold. We're at the point where we have this vast history of kind of shady answers that are all becoming sort of crystallized and clear. And we're sort of on the precipice. Like from here forward is when the industry really starts and when you start to get consumer uptake and we really start to get momentum and people get consumer devices in their own hands. And we're going to start having better validated science come to the fore.
I think there's an interesting, I'd like to answer the question sort of with a little quick story, really quick story, is that, is it going to be, is it here now? Yes. And then is it going to be even better in the future? Absolutely. We're very early on the sensor side, and interpreting the data that are coming from the sensors. But even with that, I think there's a huge opportunity. So for example, I maybe like some of you in the room, I'm really bothered by noise. And so a friend of mine let me borrow a decibel meter, which measures the intensity of sound. And I spent a week actually measuring the sound in different environments. And what was fascinating to me is that the experience was that, just because I could tell the world that there was a number associated with the amount of irritation I was feeling, it's 80 decibels under the highway at BART, it's, 30 at the office, it's, 50 at the front of the office, whatever it happens to be. If I open the door, it's going to be 5 decibels higher. Because I had that feedback from the environment and I could visualize it, it was kind of like a patient that could control the morphine drip on their, in their recovery room. And what they found in studies is that if patients have the efficacy to be able to control the amount of morphine, they actually experience less pain and they use less morphine. And so the critical thing to think about when you're designing these systems is that you're giving it that feedback. You are allowing people to see stuff that they can't see they can't see currently. And so I believe that there's this real opportunity to take something that may only be replicable in a lab, pull the behaviors out of that, and then design those behaviors that have that effect, and then design those behaviors into some therapies that don't require a headset at the moment, but because because they've been validated, then you'll have this effect. Because right now, I'm not nearly as bothered by noise. That's a one rat study, right? But you might be able to think about it was just that feedback, that experience. I'm able to see something and seeing is somehow believing. I'm actually changing my neural processes.
So you're not a Seattle Seahawks fan?
I guess not.
Okay, nobody got that. The Super Bowl, anyway, that was one factor this year, was the Seattle fans were known for being so loud they were producing decibels that were like standing next to a jet engine in these stadiums.
If you go over 160, I think you get ear punctures. So
right.
that's bad news.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, Tommy, what about the more business side?
Yeah, so if I look at the industry, as I said, we have like 15 years of experience. And when we started the company, in the first place, when we were saying that we're doing brand fitness software, people were looking at us and we don't understand what are you talking about. That was 15 years ago. Now when we say that we do brand fitness software or brand training programs, people understand what we're talking about roughly. They understand. They have an idea of what we do and what is the program. So that's from the business point of view. And that's really good. And also the thing is, in 15 years, we had a lot of improvement in technologies, which can back up everything that we say. We can, less knowledgeable, but like fMRI. Sorry, I'm French, so sometimes it's reversed. The acronyms are reversed. But yeah, that kind of technologies are really important.
We like your accent.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Anyway, so, a lot of what we're talking about, Ariel was talking about sort of, the dodgy science of the past, and on the other hand, you have the sort of top-down science that's coming from traditional medicine, with the full electrode caps, you're in a clinical setting. Part of what we're seeing here, obviously, is an upswell from the kind of bottom up, kind of meeting the top down kind of approach. And do you all see that meeting happening? Is established traditional medicine, looking at the activity at a meeting like this and from a wellness perspective and taking it seriously? How are those two connecting up?
So established traditional medicine is poking its head around the corner and seeing what might be there. You're always in any group going to have vanguards, people who are interested in what's novel, what's not necessarily validated from a scientific perspective, unfortunately, and people who are willing to take risks. And I know we've had lots of physicians coming up to us saying, great, let's use this with our patients, like lots of them. We have large companies coming up to us saying, great, we want to use these inside of our medical practice. And so we have the medical establishment very interested in how this is applied and not asking questions like, is it FDA regulated, which maybe they should be asking. I mean, I sit very much on this fence of give people tools that they can use, but please make sure the tools are great and that they are actually, if not validated today because you haven't had the time or effort, fundamentally validatable because they're that good.
Yeah, I mean, in mental health and psychology, for me, it seems like I'm amazed at how open teachers and clinicians are to this idea of getting control or some sense of what the brain is doing when you're, for example, trying to regulate your anxiety and dampening. And they see that even the metaphor works really well. So for decades, we've been telling kids in our programs, if you just change the way that you think about the world out there, if you just mellow out, breathe in, breathe out, the world out there responds differently to you. They think we're full of it. They don't believe us. They don't have experiences like that. Then you provide them a game that they're immersed for like hours and hours, and all they're doing is changing their mind state, and something out there in the actual scary game is changing as a result of their own power, of their own mind. That is incredibly powerful for these kids, but also for the clinicians, for the teachers, for the parents who are watching their kids getting empowered from this experience. And so I think that part of the clinical world and the caregivers is actually not such a big barrier, at least in our area. Maybe medical, it might be more.
Yeah, and Tommy, so you've been working with pharma a little bit with what you're doing. Is part of what's happening here, and I guess it needs to happen, I mean, I write a lot about genetics. There's still very few standards around genetics, that a clinician can use, that the traditional, wellness providers can use. Is that part of what, you've been around a little longer, your company, not you personally maybe, but is that part of what you're doing with some of those alliances? I mean, what's the strategy there?
The strategy there is, for instance, with Bayer, what they do is they get the patients and they offer them a treatment for MS, which is actually reducing the period of time between different crises. And on top of that, they provide their patients with specific cognitive training to be able to train the cognition at the same time. So now the industry, for instance, they work very closely with nurses, with doctors, to be able to have the follow-up with the patients.
Yeah, well, I think it's something interesting in a sense is that you've got, on the clinical side, you have one thing, and then on behavioral side, the reason why we've got, such a disconnect, and I had that question, earlier on the first day, is that in terms of wellness, at least for adults, for adult wellness, is that a lot of the things, where we make decisions, and if you're trying to change behavior, the systems, the cortex that's in charge of making the decisions is separate from the limbic system, which is where you feel. So it's kind of like rubbing your tummy and patting your head. You've got they're a little bit disconnected. What I feel is different than what I'm thinking. And so one of the big challenges with behavior change is because the what I feel doesn't come instantly from the choice, and so it's this rewiring that needs to be done. We can use tools to do that. We can also use kind of therapies to do that. But I think you can also use intention. Meditation is great, but I think we also have this whole field of active meditation. CBT is a little bit different than talk therapy. Meditation, now we've got the opportunities for active meditation, and games are definitely active meditation, where you can repeat an action and create an emotional state and rewire your brain. So if for people who have smartphones, if I were to show my photos with you, what would you do? You'd pinch, you'd tap, you zoom on the glass, right? You just to see the photos. You do those same gestures, but on the back of my hand, and we better be on a date or something, right? And that because there's so much social emotion coming from the experience. Now, we don't know if it's oxytocin yet. We don't know, but we do know it's trust. Players say that they pet their iPhone because it makes them happy. And so it's that action, that gesture that's creating these emotions. So in a sense, you can take those emotions, the like button on Facebook. It's me picking a digital flea off of you. We're primates. And that emotional charge, is there in these actions. And so we can, even without a waiting for the sensing technology to get down into the limbic brain, we can actually use what we know about, games to create these behavior loops that include actions that have the emotions we need to sort of, help people be less fearful, be more confident, empowered. In my decibel meter thing, I felt, I not only felt more aware and empowered, I felt like I had more control, even though all I did was I could just see how much it was.
Yeah, that brings up a number of points around the notion that, we assume, at least we all hope, that this will all be used in positive ways. It'll help us, be healthier, think, feel better about ourselves and all of that. But there of course, as you're talking about behavior modification, this can go in other directions too. It could be required, for instance, that certain people have to play games, and you can think about, as we're entering this era of, Snowden and the NSA and all of this, who's going to actually be in charge eventually of using this? I've done a couple stories on the military on using, not only passive but also active stimulants, in the brain, and maybe we could talk about that.
Yeah, there's many Orwellian fantasies that we can go, and I think there's.
I don't know if they're all
directions.
fantasies.
Well, and certainly they've said that, from the very first. Technology has always had that light in the dark. From the, when they invented writing, people would no longer be able to think. With that early information technology. That's what Socrates said, exactly. And so the same is true here, and that's why with our next game, which is called Lux. It's a game about forgiveness, so it's about overcoming disappointment, and that's Lux is in light. And what you're doing is the important thing to get to the point is that you are, if you empower people with the tools so that they can understand and they can manage and they can move their own mental states, then should some Orwellian scenario happen, at least there's going to be a little bit more awareness and perhaps a little bit more strength of character, of brain. The happiness comes from your cortex and your limbic system being in tune, that they can dance together. They're not on speaking terms. You can't talk together. But anyway, we've got some great.
I feel like we almost want to do a little cathartic exercise together. Many of us here are in the neurospace, and we've all been either obsessing ourselves or riddled by the questions of what if this goes wrong? What if the military gets hold of your brain? What if? I almost feel like, can the audience shout out like fears or concerns that you have, things that you've heard, things that you're wondering? I'm not kidding. Let's have a little, just anyone. What have you heard?
I think she literally wants you to yell something out.
Yeah. Okay, Congressman will make you vote for them. What else?
Electoral coercion.
Yeah, you go into the booth and zap, I'm going to vote for the other party.
Yikes.
Yes, neuromarketing.
There we go, neuromarketing.
Can I sell you something that you want because I know you so deeply?
I'm suddenly having this terrified moment of remembering in third grade, because I was, I acted up a lot, and I had to stay after school and write "I will not talk" on the board 5,000 times. Am I going to be forced to have to sit for 2 hours with some sort of, brain stimulant, getting me to calm down or not talk in class? Maybe that would be a good thing. Yeah,
I actually don't know which is the
Orange.
worst force of coercion.
Yes.
So we all have these fears and concerns about the technology, and I certainly even harbor them myself as somebody who's bringing the technology to the fore. It's the thing that keeps me up at night. We're here on the vanguard creating what is an entire new frontier, a new way that people are going to be interacting, a new technology that we're promoting and saying this is going to be good for you, and in the future we're going to have all these amazing solutions. And knowing that there is a dark side to it really caused me to stand up and want to take action. So I've created something called the CEREB, Center for Responsible Brainwave Technologies. Been working on it for 3 or 4 years, and it's finally come to a formalization with people on board from MIT, from biosecurity, bioethics, some of the industry partners here. And we've all come together to create a set of standards for the industry, to really think about what the issues are, to say, okay, how can we make sure that in the future these technologies are safe on 4 pillars: privacy, safety, efficacy, and transparency. And ensure that anytime people use the technology, you know that you're going to have safe privacy, that you know your brainwaves are going to be stored and decoded effectively, that you always have ownership of your data. That's one of our bottom line things. You must have ownership of your own brain data. You must be able to take it off the server at any point. You need to agree to terms of service that are written in English so you understand what happens to your brain data. And the applications that you use have to be deemed efficacious in some way. There are lots of people who are creating brain technology solutions that aren't really based on brain technologies in any real way.
We also have to be in terms of like time frame, like how soon is that going to be really relevant? Because the amount of data I can back out of what that brain is telling me right now, I mean, we are just still talking about the very surface. We can't read your thoughts yet, so we do have a little bit of time.
We have time, but
can.
So you can't yet read thoughts, definitely. And brainwaves at the moment are not identifiable data. So if we de-identify, we remove your name, then the data itself is de-identified. In the future, who knows? And so the goal is to set up systems now. So actually, anybody, if any of you would like to join CEREB, I don't run it. It's not an InterAxon initiative. We have somebody else independent running the entire organization. And so we really encourage everybody to come together and join together to help us create the set of standards, to implement them, to put our voices at the table and make sure that we mitigate all our future issues.
Yeah, I really like that. I mean, as somebody that writes a lot about policy, again, mostly on genetics is just slightly ahead, and they're already having some discussions, obviously, around genetic manipulation, all of that. And it's really important for this community to think about this and not just push it off into the future. When you're at the very beginning like this, there are ways, and we've had technologies, as has been mentioned, Nicole and Ariel both mentioned. We've been through this before, actually all the way probably back to the discovery of fire, where you had pro and anti-fire people, I'm sure. But we know how to,
Now we just have Burning Man.
Yeah, right. All right. But
the playa, I love it.
Playa. But we figured out ways to punish people that abuse this technology. Transparency is important, but it's not something to take lightly. And in fact, I wonder, Tommy, at the end there, again, the company's been around for a little bit here. Have these issues even come up? Is it even something that
Yeah, of course, it's something that we take very seriously. You have the options to share your data or not. You always have the option. That's, for instance, when you are a professional, you subscribe patients on the platform, that the first thing that patients will see is pop up saying, do you want to share your information with your doctor? So that's something that really came up. Also, from a technology point of view, we really pay attention to separate different database for the data to be able to identify the user, and another database for actually the results. So that's from a technology point of view. We really pay attention to that, yeah.
Do you want to say anything about that? Okay. Anyway, well, let me move on to an interesting sort of question about, and again, reporting on technology. There's often this notion of if you build it, they will come. And are we having that happen a little bit with this technology? I mean, are consumers really interested in this beyond a kind of core community? And I ask that partly in the context of wellness because there are an awful lot of ways, even I see here, that you don't need the device necessarily.
Yeah.
You can calm yourself, you can use meditation,
Yeah.
and you're getting a sort of, you're getting more data with the device. But is this ready yet? And if not, when will it be ready?
Well, I think that's a really good question, absolutely, and it's the right time to think about it. In fact, there are really, I would say, 3 things that we in NeuroGaming need to stop doing right now. Okay, the first one is that we're pushing the technology, and technology is like, ooh, novel, that's cool, and you can get a good demo together. But if it doesn't last past 15 seconds or maybe it's 15 minutes, you're not going to go past the novel, sort of what we call the novelty window. So whether it's dopaminergic or whatever that you've got going, it's like, oh wow, that's cool, that's new. You have to have a secondary system somewhere where you're actually producing benefit or something that's worth the $200 or $300 for the headset or that kind of thing. So if you're just pushing the technology, that's not going to work. If we overpromise, hey, we can read our brain, hey, we can read emotion. There's very little emotional stuff we can read right now. You can do even the facial micro-expression stuff is still really early. We can still do better as human beings. To code the 7, Ekman's 6, and plus I add curiosity. That's still, so don't overpromise. And then the third thing is you don't want to ignore emotion. You don't want to ignore the emotional response to these systems. I mean, we've got lovely hardware stuff coming out that's a lot more pleasing. Google Glass has got negative social emotions. So, you put an iPhone, you've got an increase in oxytocin or whatever's related to social emotions. You put on Google Glass, you're actually going to decrease it because, like, I'm the Borg and I'm, recording you and that sort of thing. And then, well, isn't that right? I mean, so like if you've got something that want to be adopted, with those white earbuds when they came out, like, oh, wow, you were really cool because you had an iPhone. And then with Google Glass, it's like, oh, man, very different, very different. And I can't share, so decreasing trust, so you get that response. And so then speaking of that, one last thing about emotion is you really want to look at the models. We really need to have in this effort, what are the models of emotion? Okay, I've heard your words arousal valence model too many times at this conference. We've got to, that's not an emotional model. That is a way to calibrate a sensor. Okay, arousal is just, positive. I mean, basically it's the amount of excitement, and then it's positive or it's negative. We're talking, if we want to have things that are really emotional, like we want to move people like movies, we want to invent the new emotional set for AR, we want to invent the storytelling in VR. Where is curiosity on arousal valence? Where's wonder? Where is Schadenfreude? They have other qualities in our experience as humans, and that's what we want with neurogaming. Whether it's wellness or just pure entertainment, we want to bring ourselves, if we're going to put on these expensive headsets or invest in a gaming product or wellness product, we want to bring our full human, full humanity in it. We want to express our humanity, we want to experience humanity. And you need to do that on a much deeper emotional level. So we need the models, we need the deep thinking, let's not just, do what we can with the sensors that we've got, absolutely, but let's model just based on the sensors.
So I think emotion is really important, and I think that, this is now about design. We talk a lot about the sensors, and the sensors are evolving and will continue to evolve. But now we're talking about game design. The thing that has moved me the most in the last year and a half has been working with these professional game designers, artists, musicians, people who know how to create narrative that pulls you in, and not only create wonder and awe and joy and fear. What I want to do, because I'm a psychologist that wants to help kids learn how to manage their depressive feelings or their irritability or their anger or their anxiety, I want to actually make them feel those bad emotions. And I want to make them feel those bad emotions because I want to create a context that they're then motivated to learn new ways of coming out of those negative emotions. So I think that the power of emotion is indeed really, really important, and to have the whole range of our human emotions expressed in these games means that we have to go and not create only serious games, these really small, serious games that basically psychologists suck at. We need to go to the people who are trained at this stuff and work with them and partner with them and the big game designers, and go to the Sonys and go to the Microsofts and all of that, and get those designers who know what they're doing, so that the sensors then become more relevant because they know the mechanic better.
Yeah, and one of the things, just to jump in there really quickly, is that negative emotions are actually required for a good gaming experience. You will not feel fiero, yes, by pushing a button. You can't push a button and win. Basketball is fun because the hoop is small and it's overhead. So you want to take people through difficult times to then really amplify. You simplify the world, you suspend the consequences, you amplify the feedback. Those are some of the basic rules of game design. And then that's how and that feeling of success, that feeling of empowerment can then come from them controlling their environment in whatever it is that you want them to master.
I was going to say, I just want to win.
Yeah.
Well,
that's hard fun. That's
as
hard
a consumer,
fun.
a guy who plays games, I mean, I want a lot of emotions to be played out, but that's what I want to crush the
but you also
the bad
want
guys.
easy fun. Like, there's a ton of easy fun out there in this, which is like, the leap motion, that you can move your hand and suddenly, something's happening on the screen, or I'm thinking a different thought and I'm throwing a truck. Those things are, it's just like it's the easy fun is the bubble wrap of game design. And so you want hard fun, winning, challenge, but you also want easy fun, which is curiosity, wonder and surprise, exploration, role play.
I don't know, I just want to win. So I'd like to engage you all now. We've already engaged you a couple of times, right? But anybody have any questions out there for our panel? And I know this is working your brain at the end of the day here. Looks like we have, by the way, anybody, yeah. Okay, there we go.
Hi, my name is Michael Rapucci. I'm with Evoke Neuroscience. And the question I had is just related
your name,
to...
please?
I'm sorry?
Could you give your name, please?
My name is Michael Rapucci. I'm with Evoke Neuroscience. We're based out of New York City. My question's related to what Ariel asked about in terms of what are we afraid of. One of my fears with a lot of the work that we're doing in this space is that by providing these tools to hopefully help engage people to understand better what their internal states and improve their internal self-regulation, that we may prevent them from actually getting there because of a dependence upon the tools themselves. And if we say, well, it's the tool that we're going to use to help us get to that final goal of having that perfectly self-aware and internal regulation, then how are we in this space really going to make money? Because if they don't actually need our tool in the long term, yeah, so that's my question.
So there's several parts to that question. One is, can you use tools to create self-awareness but not create a dependency on the tool? I think that's the first part of what you're asking. And the answer is, it depends on the individual in the scenario. We all know that we can give people things and they can binge on them. They've done that on video games or chocolate or whatever it is. But we also know that we're amazing at self-regulating as humans. And as you discover something that is good for you, it tends to want to motivate you to do better in your own life and to learn to self-regulate. So I know with our tool, we're teaching people to calm and settle their mind and manage their mind. And one of the big things that we're teaching people is an awareness of their brain and the awareness to make choices about your brain, about how you use your own mind and what you engage with in the world. And so by teaching that choice, we're well aware that part of that choice is you may choose to not use the tool in the future because you learned something. And that's totally fine. Our mission is to teach people to help themselves. And there are more than enough people in the world who need to learn even that basic first step, that if all of them try it once, use it for 6 months or a year or 2 years or 3 years and learn something about themselves and then put it down, I think we will have done an amazing mission in the world and touched lots and lots of lives, which happens to generate revenue, which is not the goal, but is a very nice side benefit.
And I completely agree. And really, we only have this one brain. So if we're training up in a video game, for example, and it's real enough and evokes genuine emotions that are then regulated over and over and over in gameplay that you're really engaged in, and you put that down, you hope that actually out in the world, this triggers the same kind of triggers of anxiety or whatever will trigger the same brain pathways that were triggered in this training exercise in the video game. And that's exactly what we want to do, is that the game becomes, at least for my purposes, not as relevant, or can be used as homework when you get, a little bit out of practice or whatever it is. And I think that that's lovely. And also clinically, if you think about, these tools can be homework exercises, really, right? So they don't have to be the only thing you use to regulate your emotions, but they can be just sort of like booster shots that you then go out into the real world and feel a little more empowered.
So I want to take...
I also actually want to thank you for the question, Michael, because it's those kinds of questions that cause us to self-reflect, to shift on our behavior, and to continue to do the things that are good and right for us.
And then
so, awesome, keep asking them.
And then what we need to do to take this discussion to the next level, because we're kind of thinking, okay, yeah, we're talking about therapy games, but we don't, that's not it. That's not, the line does not stop there. If you think about it, where most of us work, in the average American workplace, is cubicle. We live in cubicles. And face it, cubicles are really cages for people. If it were a zoo, the Humane Society would protest the average American workplace. All right, now if we're talking about wellness, if we're talking about emotion, let's not just design games that we play on the side. Let's actually address the fact that our word processors, our spreadsheets are completely autistic. They do not recognize our emotions. They do not put us in the emotional state that we need to be. At the very beginning of the project, we need to be super creative. At the middle, we need to make decisions and comparisons, whatever. At the end, we need to be concentrating on that deadline. And that same interface needs to do it. Right now, we talk about usability and all of that stuff. We need to talk about emotion, and we can be inspired by, the language, this language of games, and make changes to create new experiences that put us in the emotional space that allow us really to be, fully human.
Can we make Microsoft products more fun?
Oh, absolutely.
I sit in front of my laptop all day.
Well, yeah, the challenge is you just got to get buy-in. But yeah, no, actually, we've done. Not with Microsoft, but we've done with others.
I think
We tried with the paperclip. It didn't really work.
Yeah, that was a huge backfire. That was major. Yeah, and then
But good intention.
Good intention. But yeah, put a great character interface, great idea on the most modal, unusable dialogue box nested thing.
Too goofy,
yeah,
too.
It was crazy.
Anyway, in the back there?
He's
Hey.
also angry at you most of the time.
Hey there. My name's Mikey Siegel, and I have a small startup developing technology in this space. And we're talking about wellness and well-being, but actually these are very tricky terms to define. But all of you on this panel are optimizing for your own idea of what wellness and well-being are. So I guess it's a two-part question. One question is, if you were to imagine into this ultimate sci-fi future where your technology is fantastically successful, what would that look like in terms of human experience? What would that feel like? And the other question is, on a technology side, what role do you see technology in playing in achieving that ultimate extreme vision of human well-being and thriving?
Yeah, I was asking to wind up the
Awesome.
panel with that question, but I think we're close to the end. So yeah, tell us your visions of the future. I mean, literally, what will this look like? Will there be some little, everybody will have like a little dot on their head, or will there be, funny hats? I mean, I know you didn't.
Cool.
You meant it more serious than that, but what will this look like?
So there are several parts to Mikey's question. So the first one was, if you follow along your path of what you're giving to the future, what's it going to be? And of course, there are many answers to what well-being is, and Muse Calm is one of them, and it's only one narrow one. Somebody who uses Muse Calm and a society who uses Muse Calm will get the benefits of a mindfulness practice, which means decrease in stress, improvement in attention, decrease in blood pressure, improvement in emotional intelligence and self-awareness, and which hopefully leads to a kinder, happier world. There are lots of other probably applications that will be built on top of our platform, like depression tools. We have researchers working in the depression space now with depression biomarkers, ADD tools. We have a bunch of people building ADD neurofeedback devices. So where those outcomes will be, we don't know. We will see. In terms of the hardware, which is your question, we're probably going to see hardware shrinking dramatically over the next few years. You're going to see first hardware getting smaller, thinner, probably into an over-the-head format. You're going to start to see integration into glass, of course. You're going to see integration into all the things that we typically use. And by 15 years down the road, it's going to be kind of common for people to have an EEG device on their head. And by 25 years down the road, it's going to be a really standard way that we interface. And at that point, it still won't be control. You're not going to be thinking, hey, get me that glass of water. But your phone will know that you're awake, and your phone will know that you're asleep, and it's going to stop ringing. Your iTunes playlist is going to know that you're depressed and suggest music that it's seen makes you happy. So it's just going to be a standard way that we interact.
Yeah, and just following up on that, I think the sort of M-health and E-health boost is this, quantification of the self. Your cell phone will be able to read your tone of voice, which we know actually oscillates with depression. We'll get to your GPS system will know that you haven't actually hung out with your friends in 3 days, and that's a risk factor for you. We have latent semantic analysis that will be able to analyze your texts and know, Jesus, this person is going down. And then I would hope that we have these games that are incredibly well designed, but also that don't have to be hour-long experiences that pop up when you're at that risk place and just give you a bit of a booster feeling. So I think that they're going to be also, a lot of this move is going to be more in that personalized game space as well, and taking technology and making it work for who you are. And that personal well-being, we have lots and lots of research in psychology about what that looks like and what thriving looks like. And I think we can use that science, and that's really actually really important. Use the science that we have for the last 4 decades on positive psychology, on the neuroscience of emotion regulation, and put those into these devices and games. I think we really underestimate how much we could do if we took that psychological research and integrated it with good game design.
My point of view on this one is that we're going to see a shift in the behavior of the general population. If you think about it, 40 years ago, when you were telling people that they have to go to the gym, it's good for the health, they would look at you and like, too complicated, too much time, too much effort to put into that. But now they do it. And I think that the next thing is going to be to actually take care of your brain health in general. So what I do is one of the components of brain health is brain stimulation, but you have many other things and other technologies that are coming around. It's also paying attention to what you eat, managing your stress, actually exercising, sleeping well, and so on. So a lot of things, and that will be something that you will do in your daily life. Take care of that, and I think that you're right. It's going to take you just a few minutes to do that. I mean, that's going to be in a very long time. But yeah, this is where we're going to. I mean, I guess.
Cool. Well, I think that one of the biggest opportunities in games is to, for wellness is really for us to start making traction on intractable problems. So, for example, simulation games can help you manage multivariate data with multivariate outcomes. There's a new type of thinking that we can actually inspire, with people. So when you play SimCity, you understand like what a city is. Oh, that's a sewer, that's a power line. You kind of understand a city in a way that you didn't before you had that game experience. Or like ecology, saving the world. We have a game called Tilt World, where on iOS, where the character gathers seeds that you then plant in, that through a partnership with WeForest, we actually plant real trees on the island of Madagascar. And so I think there's this real opportunity for games to give people a lift and think of, wow, this intractable problem is actually making progress. Our players have planted 16,000 trees, real trees, mangrove trees. And so I think that we've got, kind of that thing going, and I think that would really help. In a sense, we can take like my scenario with a word processor, being able to take the tools that we use and retune them to put us in those brain states that we need for the different types of roles that we play, and then give us the feedback that we need so that we can stay, that we can stay motivated, that we can stay exploring, even taking boring, tedious tasks and providing the variety that our brains kind of crave. And we can actually create these super learning kind of pathways for ourselves by giving ourselves control and by designing the right kind of tools. And if we do all that and collaborate together, with the right emotional models, with more wonderful research like we have here, the right business structures, we can all work together and unlock human potential through play.
Lots of questions here. Right here. Hang on, it's coming.
My name is Hunter Whitney. I'm kind of thinking of the uncanny valley, if you're familiar with that. It's the idea of that sort of it's like a robot that looks sort of like, or an avatar that looks like, but not quite.
It triggers disgust. That's why and it's a difference between it looks kind of real but not quite. So I feel like there's something wrong with my vestibular system. So I throw up because I feel like I've eaten a bad berry or something.
Right. And so I'm wondering, you're talking about some of this emotional mirroring, and there's a little bit of the sort of, let's say, creepy factor, uncanny valley factor, where if your iTunes knows what you're thinking or feeling, and it sort of reflects back, where does that kind of evoke? And I think things like Clippy for the Microsoft avatar, it evokes a sort of revulsion. So I think where is that curve in what you're talking about?
This is all about good game design. I'm not even a game designer, but I find it really odd that we don't talk enough about getting the people. That revulsion thing shouldn't be there. The Clippy thing just should never have been there.
That's why we have so many zombie games, by the way, is because if you feel disgust when you see a zombie character, oh, it's in character, right? Because
you don't mind killing it.
You don't mind killing it. You don't mind killing it. It's not quite real. That's why zombie games work really well. But I agree, good game design, and then I think it's also giving people the mirror into themselves. So it's not an automated playlist, but it's something that you can create, that you can experience. So you're giving people a new Lego set for the mind that connects their emotional system to their cognitive system. So we eliminate this breakdown, because it's that breakdown between these two systems that's causing a lot of the unwellness, especially the mental unwellness in the United States today.
We have a tendency to not want to see or to be unable to see our own emotional states. And so it may be okay if we present them fact, and at first we may be a little bit, uneasy about the fact, because it's the first time we're able to see ourselves, and it's often very difficult to learn. It's often very difficult to hear negative feedback about you and who you are. And it's part of our job as humans, as we learn and grow, to be okay with that feedback. And it's
Seems
actually
like an
part of our
enormous challenge.
but it's also part of our job as designers to present that feedback in really gentle and loving and easy ways that allow you to begin to take it and begin to learn
Or
and begin to evolve.
inspire curiosity.
Sure.
Send yourself out on an adventure. And if you think about what emotions, the reason it's so hard is not only can we not talk using words to our limbic system, but the emotions, they're invisible, right? And in fact, like back in the early Greek mythology, what the emotions really were the pantheon. I'm gripped with Athena. And that was the ability to, that was actually how they described the experience of having a strong emotional state.
I like tying this into history in that way. Other questions? Right here.
These are great questions. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dana Eckhoff. I'm interested in games and learning. I'm wondering when you're doing design, and whether it's game design or designing in any way, are there non-trivial considerations that you have between men and women? If you have any thoughts on that?
Sure, I can certainly speak to it in headset design. We've spent probably 2 solid years making a headset that's going to fit every head. It's going to be comfortable on little ears, big ears, Asian foreheads, Indian foreheads. I've learned so much about the geography of the face. It's amazing. And it's taken an extraordinarily rigorous design process, along with a lot of insight and just leaps in innovations in order to solve that. And these are not solutions that come lightly.
On the game design side, I'm really passionate about this, in a sense, because you're talking about variance between individuals, and what is what has caused an immense amount of pain in the game industry today is something that I think is really important for us to listen to, is that when you have, male and female, I'm often asked, well, games for girls, games for guys, what's the difference? Well, if you look at it, if you remember, any kind of result, even if it's statistically significant, it actually does not represent a single number, so it might be session length, amount of violence. It actually represents a normal distribution curve, by and large. And those two curves overlap, and in fact, quite often, they overlap more than they are disparate. And then the way you get a mass audience is when you add them together. And when I ask players, okay, well, let's put everything that you like about games on the table, and then in one hand, you take everything that guys like, and only guys like, in one hand. And then the other hand, you grab everything that women like and only women like in the other. And then, so a marketer might say, well, yeah, then what do you do? Next step, okay, we make a game for girls and a game for guys, right? But what are we forgetting? Everything that's still on the table. And it turns out, in games, the things that people like the most about games are still on the table.
So we did this with this game that we created, which was supposed to be like if anybody's familiar with Psychonauts, it's this cute little cartoon game. And the character, we months thinking, should it be a boy character or a girl, or do we want the player to make it into whoever they are? And there's problems with that because people like to project into a fantasy thing, and maybe they don't want it to look exactly like who they feel like they represent. And in the end, we just got a cute. It was a male character, but it was a cute little male character. And we asked girls, and we pilot tested. We asked girls, are you identifying? Are you immersed? And they're equally immersed because it's a game and they know the point is to project themselves. And so it turns out that at least some games, it doesn't really matter if you've got that good other features of the game that really pull you in. And with the headset kind of technology, one of the things that's the most compelling is the idea that you can move and manipulate stuff in the world, and that's equally awesome for boys, girls, men, women, I think.
Yeah, I'd love to talk more about this whole individualization. I mean, we're talking about boys and girls, male, female, but there's so much more that you get into. But anyway, let's take maybe one more question. Okay. Who's had their arm up the longest?
The woman in the yellow shirt.
And we will, I think everyone can stay after, and we can.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I've got tons more to say, and I know these guys, over lunch, we were like
You do have a lot to say. Okay, how about over here? Yep.
Hi, my name is Pedro Johannes. I'm a researcher at Stanford University. And my question is this. So a lot of what we have been talking about is producing calm in the mind and helping people manage their own mind. How do you think about regulating negative emotions and positive emotions? Because a lot of what we've been talking about is how do we deal with inherently negative emotions, or what we think of as negative emotions. How do you think about positive emotions? Should we also be looking at how to regulate those and how to manage those?
Well, you could also use, I think there's a really interesting approach to that, where if you wanted to grossly stereotype and say, okay, negative emotions, let's just call them cortisol, and that's or an overdose of it, whatever, or it's fear, right? And then you can think of, well, now are there positive emotions that I can then reassociate with that experience that then could do that? And so, like if you go to like an endorphin, which would be a masker. So you run, you feel good, and that just masks pain. So you could do that, or you could go to oxytocin. So now I'm feeling trust and social bonding instead of fear. So if I've got the, like, I can't go to that dinner party, I can, maybe increase oxytocin through some kind of activity, some kind of game, and then you can actually, help rewire the brain.
From the EEG perspective, when you talk about increasing positive emotion, when you have a negative emotion, you have a hemispheric specialization, less activity on one side versus the other. By increasing activity, you are potentially able to increase the person's positive emotion. And when we talk about calming the mind, what we're really talking about is teaching people to reduce negative thought, and the act of doing that creates the space for any kind of thought that you want to have. And typically in most individuals, that's a natural, spontaneous movement towards positive thought.
All right, with that, I think we are finished here. And I don't know, Zach, if you want to say any farewells?
Yeah, that's it. Glad you're all here. See you next year.
Thank you, panel.